Okay, this is lesson 3.5, solving absolute value equations. We are going to go over the warm-ups, so go ahead and pause the video. And then start the video back up and check your answer. Okay, the first thing I need to do here is I need to do distributive property. I need to distribute the 2 to both terms inside my parentheses. So this is 12 minus 3x. I keep this the same. Less than or equal to 6 minus 2x. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times, that's a negative 1 there. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2x. Now, like I've told you, always move the smallest number with a letter first. Okay, so like I've told you, you always want to move the smallest number with a letter first. That is the negative 3x. So I'm going to add 3x to both sides. My negative 3 and positive 3 cancel out. 12 is less than or equal to 6 plus 1x, because negative 2 plus 3 is plus 1. So now, I have a constant and a coefficient on the same side. I cannot have that. I cannot have a constant and a coefficient on the same side. So I'm going to move my constant. It's a positive 6, so I subtract 6. 6 is less than or equal to plus 1x. Now, you can divide both sides by 1, but it's not going to matter. If I divide by 1, 6 over 1 is 6 is less than or equal to x. I did not multiply or divide by a negative, so I did not flip my inequality. My inequality stayed the same. Number 2, I'm going to rewrite this as 1/2 x minus 1 is less than 8. The first thing you have to do when you have a fraction, you have to get rid of the loner first. Now we're going to start calling this the other guy because he's not always the loner. The other guy has to go to the other side. It's a negative 1, so I have to add 1 to both sides, leaving me 1/2 x is less than 9. Now, how do I get rid of a fraction? How do I get rid of a fraction? That is correct. To get rid of a fraction, I multiply both sides by the bottom number of my fraction. The 2's cancel. 9 times 2 is 18 is less than 1x. We've already seen 1x and x are the same thing. I did not multiply or divide by a negative number, so I do not flip my inequality. The last one. The first thing I do is get rid of the other guy. He's a negative 5, so I add 5. When you guys are coming in for help, when you're coming in to do your OCs, so many of you don't know to move the loner, the constant, first. You have to move the constant first. And that's because we're getting into problems that have constants and coefficients on the same side. In that case, you move the smallest coefficient first. These cancel out. 2x is greater than or equal to 8. Notice that my number next to my x is positive. Now, here I had numbers on both sides. But when I isolated my number next to my x and had it only on one side, it was positive. If that's the case, you do not flip your inequality. Now I divide both sides by positive 2. X is greater than or equal to 4. Okay? Okay. Today, we are going to apply absolute value. We are going to solve absolute value equations by solving 2 equations to find 2 solutions. That's kind of confusing. You will apply absolute value equations by solving two equations to find two solutions. I said solve when I should have said apply. All right, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? This is what we're going to do today. We're going to solve absolute value, and we're going to solve one equation twice, is what it means. That's all it means. We're going to solve the same equation twice. We're just going to do one different thing with the second one. So here are some definitions that you need to write down. If you remember, an absolute value is the distance between the origin and the point on a number line. Please don't write that. Honestly, do you know what does origin mean?
Starting.
What? On a number line, what's the origin? Go ahead.
It's 0.
Yes. The origin is 0. So it's the distance between, instead of writing origin, why don't you write 0 and the point on the number line? It's the distance between 0 and the number. That's what I would write. Absolute value is the distance between 0 and the number. So the absolute value of 5 equals 5 because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is 5 numbers from 0. The absolute value of -5 is 5 because it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's -5. It is 5 numbers from 0. That's why absolute value is always positive. Absolute value is distance. It's always positive. Okay. Now, the absolute value of x equals 5. What does that mean? Well, what that means is our answer is 5 or -5. Why do we have two answers? Why do we have two answers? Yes.
Like, if the number is -5 inside the absolute value, it's an answer, but then you can have 5 or 6.
Well, what does the absolute value of 5 equal?
5.
What does the absolute value of -5 equal? 5.
Because it doesn't matter.
Right. So,
They're the same.
right. X could either be 5 or -5. Because it's absolute value, we have two answers. Okay? So that's why when we solve absolute value problems, we will have two answers. They won't always be the positive and negative. They won't always be the positive and negative. You need to hear that, because you guys will do that. You'll find it for one and then put the negative for the other, and it doesn't always work like that. So, step 1, you need to have the absolute value alone. This absolute value needs to be all by itself on one side of the equal sign. That is step 1. Step 2, rewrite the equation. Equation 1 equal to the positive answer. Equation 2 equal to the negative answer. Then you solve both equations. That's all we're doing. It's very simple. Okay. Okay, so what that means is, if I have the absolute value of x equals 5, I'm going to write x equals 5, x equals -5. Let's see how this looks. So, the first thing I need to see is the absolute value all by itself? Kids, and number 1, is the absolute value all by itself?
Yes.
Yeah, so all I do is I just take what's inside the absolute value out, and I set it equal to the positive answer, and I set it equal to the negative answer. Is this difficult?
No.
Okay. Everybody pause the video and do number 2 and 3. Then start the video when you're ready to see if the answers are correct. Okay, let's see if you got them right. So, my absolute value here is by itself, so x equals 9, x equals -9. My absolute value again is by itself, x equals 2, x equals -2. Now, the big question is my absolute value here all by itself?
No.
No, it's not. What is there?
Other things.
There is an other guy, isn't there? So, box the other guy. Box the other guy. Now, the sign behind the other guy does not go with the other guy. The sign to the left goes with it. There's no sign. What does that mean? The 8 is what? Positive. What do I have to do to get the absolute value all by itself? Yep, I got to move it to the other side. That means line at the equal sign, subtract the other guy. I get the absolute value of x equals, what is 19 minus 8? 11. Now, is absolute value all by itself? Yes, it is. There's nothing else on the same side of the equal sign as the absolute value. There's nothing else there. It's by itself. So now I just do the next step. X equals 11. And what else does x equal? Negative 11. Is this difficult? No, it's not. But I'm telling you, you guys do horrible on this part of the test. Let's change that right now. Okay. Okay, go ahead and do 5 and 6. Pause the video, do 5 and 6, and then start the video again to see if you got the right answers. Okay, now, the first thing we need to ask is my absolute value all by itself? No, it's not. What do I have? Well, I have the other guy here, and I have the other guy here. So I have to move the other guys in order for my absolute values to be by themselves. I have to subtract 1, subtract 3, and I have to do this to both sides. My 1's cancel, leaving me the absolute value of x equals 6. My 3's cancel, leaving me the absolute value of x equals 7. Now, is my absolute value by itself?
Yes.
So that means the absolute value of x equals 6, and the absolute value of x equals negative 6. Here, the absolute value of x equals 7, and x equals 7, and x equals negative 7. I should not have said the absolute value of x. You have to take it out of the absolute value. So I get the absolute value, I said it again. X equals 6, and x equals negative 6 for number 5. X equals 7, and x equals negative 7 for number 6. Okay, now go ahead and pause the video, do 7 and 8, and see if you get the right answer. Okay, so what were some of the problems we encountered? This time it didn't go as smooth. What were some of the problems we encountered with number 7? Yes, Ashley. What's that? The x wasn't alone, yes. But have we seen the x not being alone before?
Yes.
Yeah, but that was a problem. So we go back when we run into a problem. Yes, Lorna. Yes, you have to divide. That is correct. When you run into a problem, you do what you know. So, is my absolute value alone?
No.
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 I have the other guy right here, don't I? So I box the other guy and subtract 6. What's 22 minus 6?
16.
So I get the absolute value of 4x equals 16. Now, is my absolute value alone? No, my absolute value is alone. Is there something else inside my absolute value other than x?
Yes.
But my absolute value is all by itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is what you need to see. You need to understand this right here is an absolute value that is not alone. Shh. This right here is an absolute value that's not alone because something's being added or subtracted to it. This is an absolute value that's alone because nothing's being added or subtracted to it. So here, I take the 4x out, and what do I set it equal to? What do I set it equal to?
16.
16. And what else do I set it equal to? And then how do I get rid of the 4? Divide both sides by 4. X equals 4. X equals negative 4. Very good. Okay. Okay, and number 8. We added 3 to both sides. We got the absolute value of 3x equals 30. 3x equals 30. 3x equals negative 30. Divide by 3, x equals 10. X equals negative 10. Okay. Now we're gonna deal with 2 terms inside our absolute value. What does that look like? Let's go ahead and do example 3. The first thing you need to ask yourself, is your absolute value all by itself? Yes, nothing is being added or subtracted, so this is all by itself. Even though there are 2 terms inside my absolute value, it is all by itself. So what do I do when it's by itself? 13 minus 5x equals 2. 13 minus 5x equals negative 2. I set it equal to the positive and negative, and then I just solve like I always have been. So, what do I do first? I ship the other guy. So I subtract 13 to both sides. Negative 5x equals negative 11. Then I divide both sides by negative 5. X equals 11 over 5. Over here, I subtract 13. Now watch what happens. When I subtract 13 over here, I get negative 15. So negative 5x equals negative 15. Now I divide by negative 5. X equals positive 3. So now both of my answers are different and they're both positive. So you have to solve. You cannot just simply go, oh, well, I'll just solve one and then make it negative 11 over 5, because that's not going to give you the right answer. Okay, the last example we're going to look at is example number 4. Again, my absolute value is all by itself. Nothing's being added or subtracted to it. So I have 1/2 x minus 8 equals 5. And 1/2 x minus 8 equals negative 5. So now I just solve these 2 equations. This is very simple. If nothing's being added or subtracted to your absolute value, you set it equal to the positive and negative answer. If something's being added or subtracted, you get rid of it, and then you set it equal. First thing I have to do on both equations is get rid of my loaner. Now, that, you should notice right away, is going to give you different answers to the equation. This cancels out on both equations. I'm left with 1/2 x on both equations. However, 5 plus 8 is 13. 5 minus 8 is negative 3. Now, how do I get rid of my fraction? I multiply both sides by 2. The 2 of my fractions cancel. 1x equals 26. 1x equals negative 6. I don't need to divide by 1. Okay, again, if you have any questions, please feel free to come in and ask.